Hello ladies and gents, we're here to talk about Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. Now I think what's so interesting about this film is that if you forget, and it's easy to forget, but cast your thoughts back to when that film originally released, it was on the DVDs, the advertisement for DVDs, everywhere. It was one of those things that people advertise as groundbreaking, truly groundbreaking with the visual effects and what they did with all of the VFX. It was one of those things where you just went, wow. And now, like, admittedly, we look back at it and we go, terrible film. Most people do anyway. Most people would universally agree. Pretty bad film, not very good. Almost a parody of itself, not that good. And then the director's, not the director's commentary, the actor's commentary on it is probably perhaps some of the most eye-opening ever. Arnold Schwarzenegger sat there going, talking about breasts and things like this. Very strange commentary. But it is one of those films that, was kind of mired by the fan base and has since been hated on more and more. But it was also an introduction to many people to Terminator as a franchise because, of course, they had heard about Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 and they had obviously seen them on VHS and subsequently probably DVDs. And then this film came out and it was huge. It was one of those things. It was probably the first movie that a lot of people had ever seen in the Terminator franchise in theatres. It was massive. So we're going to be talking about this today and actually some commentary by John Mostow, the director, or Jonathan Mostow, sorry. And he's never really spoken that much about the film, but I find his commentary to be quite interesting. It's very respectful, and it's just interesting. It's interesting how he sort of reflects back on that film with a lot of positivity, actually. I did wonder when I sort of came across this stuff whether he would, I don't know, sort of go and create his own pity party and hate on himself and such. But he was actually quite respectful and he looks back at it fondly. So we'll dive into that today. I know me talking about Terminator on this channel causes a lot of issues. Hilarious, in fact. I had a lot of good time talking about Terminator Dark Fate and proving the Terminator subreddit completely wrong. That I was right, and all of the hatred threads that were created about me. Who's laughing now, bitch? Anyway, so we're going to dive into that today. If you want to support the channel further, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It's the best way you can support the channel and stay up to date on interesting articles like this. Not every channel does stuff like this, so please do check it out. And if you want to go a step further and actually watch my films and things like that, become a channel member. For level 2 members on the channel, you get to watch my films. So there's an hour-long documentary there. Support me on what I do. It's all there. Now let's dive into it again. Jonathan Mostow. And again, you would genuinely think that this guy was going to go and create some pity party. But he doesn't. Because I very much enjoyed making Terminator 3. What's so interesting about that franchise is that it has historically always been made by independent film companies and distributed by studios. Many of the companies that have made Terminator films subsequently, not because of Terminator, as all those films were generally successful, went bankrupt. That's true. That is absolutely true. And then he says the rights would end up in bankruptcy court and be sold to someone else. So the challenge, creatively, it's understandable why it's taken so long between each of the films and why sometimes the property is falling into limbo due to business and legal reasons, is that Terminator 2 was such a groundbreaking, seminal film. Great. The man that clearly understands, like he very clearly understands the property. Absolutely understands. And then he said further, it was the first time audiences had truly seen digital effects and rendered in a way that left their jaws on the floor. And again, that is true. Like, a lot of people will say, and I agree, they will say that the T-1000 in Terminator 2 was very digital effects, and yeah, it was. But a lot of that was practical as well. The majority of the stuff in Terminator 3 was just, CGI, it was just digital effects. And they would say they couldn't believe what they were seeing. You can only really dazzle people like that once. It was very hard, whether it be Terminator or any other film for that matter, to come up with the visual effects that could equal the dazzling spectacle of Terminator 2. When I made mine, I made it as a fan of the first two films, trying to make the film I would have wanted to see. I mean, look, that's the film you wanted to see. I'm shocked, but all right. But yeah, I mean, like, he is right, you know, digital effects rendered in a way. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of this which is referencing the first film as well as the second. And he even references the second film, talking about the dazzling spectacle of Terminator 2. There was a lot of miniatures and things like that. You know, when we're talking about rendered, we talk more about CG. But then he says further, it's been interesting to see subsequently different filmmakers, different producers, and even different casts coming along and reincarnating the film and extending the franchise. I haven't really been involved with the subsequent films. I was involved in developing the screenplay for Terminator 4, but I elected to do something else and directed a different film instead. I have sat back like the rest of the world and just watched the franchise continue. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, when he's talking about, you know, when I made mine, I made it as a fan of the first two films, trying to make the film I would have wanted to see. I mean, look, at the end of the day, again, agree to disagree. I highly doubt he made the film he wanted to see. You really wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger to walk around with pathetic glasses on. Didn't he get his clothes from like a stripper or something like that in this film? I mean, it was just a parody. It was just an absolute parody, and I get it because you want to rekindle that iconic look from. You know, from the first film, how do you do? Well, the second, how do you do that? Well, you know, you sort of go, you know, the whole hog and you know, sort of full steam ahead. But it's a shocker. And then I wonder whether he was anything to do with the Sergeant Candy, Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of deleted scene cameo thing, where that's the one which was modelled on the T-1000 and all. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It is. It's very, very interesting. But what do you guys think of this? Genuinely, what do you think of this? Fascinating stuff. Fascinating to hear about it. It's also fascinating, in fairness, to hear that he was actually involved in developing the screenplay for Terminator 4. Didn't know that. Didn't know that. I'm guessing that is the, you know, salvation. But again, wasn't aware of that. I wonder what input he had. But then he does say, you know, but then elected to do something else. So I'm guessing he was involved in part of the screenplay and then buggered off. Who knows? But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you're new here, please do hit subscribe, turn those bell notifications on. And if you aren't getting notified, follow me over on Twitter at Mr. H Reviews, because I do tweet some of the videos out there. And you can actually turn the bell on Twitter as well and get notified of tweets and stuff. I don't tweet that much, so it won't annoy you. But anyway, guys, thanks so much. Take care.